Ecology Basics and kind of really examine what ecology is all about. So this comes up here. So ecology, so what is ecology? It's the study of organisms interacting with each other and their environment. Okay? So there's two kind of components to that. There's the abiotic component, which, hang on a second. Let's get this back. Okay. Stand by. Sorry, we had a little moment there. So there's the abiotic component, which is all the non-living components. And then the living components is the biotic stuff. So non-living things like the leaves and the trees and the climate and all that kind of stuff. Not the trees, the leaves and the grass and the dirt and the rocks and things like that. And then the living stuff is leaves and the trees and the grass and all the animals and things that live in there. It's kind of confusing there. The weather, a lot of this stuff is really affected, the abiotic stuff is affected by the weather and what ecosystem you get there. So when you say a weather, it's the conditions in a place at a particular time. Okay? And climate is the average weather patterns. So you would say that normally in the summer it's about 85 degrees here, but sometimes, we can see that it sometimes gets to be 90 or 95 or even 100, but the average is the climate. Okay? So we get these seasonalities or these fluctuations in temperature. And the further you get from the equator, the more fluctuations you have, okay? So more fluctuations at the higher altitudes, whether you're going north or south, okay? Obviously, or higher latitudes. Obviously, if you go to Montana, they have really, really cold winters and really, really warm summers, and we have warm summers and not so cold winters. The ocean's influence is the thing that controls all the climate, okay? Because the ocean, it controls literally the planet's climate. It controls wind and ocean currents that affect the climate. Our ocean, we're living on a cold climate, so we actually stay rather moderate because of that. We're living on a cold current area. So we end up with very mild temperatures, and that actually affects the entire global system. Now we're going to get a little bit into these biomes. So here's the deal with the biomes. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about them because it's boring and it's just not that exciting. And really, I don't think you guys need me to explain what a rainforest is. So just to understand, there's a really good picture of these. There's actually two on page 831 of your book of all the land biomes that describe them. So these are the ones that you need to know. Basically, a test question is going to be, if you have an area with tall trees, gets a lot of rainfall, has pretty average temperatures year-round, what biome are you in? And it would be the tropical rainforest, okay? That's the questions that you're going to see on that AP test. So these are the ones that you need to know. So the tropical rainforest, the savanna, the subtropical desert, the temperate grasslands, like the Midwest, for example, woodland, which is basically parts of Northern California, the temperate seasonal forests, think like the East Coast, the temperate rainforest, the coniferous or boreal forest, and finally the tundra. Okay, those are all the land biomes that you need to know. So let's look at the aquatic biomes. You also need to know these. This picture looks terrible, I know, on on the video, but you guys have it in your notes. The key areas that I want you to know is this area right here, which is called, this little tiny zone is called the littoral, or it's also known as the intertidal, where the tides go in and the tides go out. That creates a little biome there, okay? The rest of the ocean, the rest of the open ocean, if you see this line here, that is showing you the pelagic, or the open ocean area, okay? And then you have, if you go down this way, you have this little tiny area, just the top layers, which is the photic zone, where light gets through and you can do photosynthesis. And then the whole rest of the ocean, all the way down, is the aphotic. No light can get through. And at the very, very bottom, you have like the abyssal plain, and like just nothing, no light penetrates there. It's very dark and cold, and the only life that grows there is around hydrothermal vents, okay? So then you have some aquatic biomes that you also need to know and understand. So on page 833, there's another list that will help you out. So these are the ones you need to know. What rivers, wetlands, ponds, and lakes. So just be able to recognize the characteristics of each of these biomes. Most of you probably can just by nature of their name and what they are. Some of them you might not know as well, like a salt marsh you might not recognize, although Newport Back Bay is an example of that. The mangrove forest, that one's probably most of you don't know what that is. You will after you visit Florida. The intertidal, most of you probably know what that is. The kelp forest, very common here in California. Seagrass beds, we have these in California, or we do not have, well, we sort of have. We have kind of like ghetto ones. They're really, really common in Florida. Coral reefs, again, not here. Florida has them, and Hawaii and things like that. Open ocean, we definitely have that. And then the one that you would not be able to see unless you have millions of dollars and could go down in a submarine, but we'll watch a video of them, is hydrothermal vents. Okay. So those are the aquatic biomes you need to know. And then the last couple things from this chapter of this basic stuff is about the biogeographic regions. And so what ends up happening, not only do you have divisions around the planet because of biomes, you have these 6 distinct regions around the world. They were actually well recognized by Alfred Wallace, he lived around the time of Darwin. He actually had some of the same theories as Darwin. So there are these 6 regions around the world that have a distinct assemblage of species that are unique to that area. You know, it's like, why don't we have lions here? Because they don't we're not in their biogeographic region. That's why, okay? And they're separated by geographic barriers. Some are things like the Himalayas separate them, or the Sahara Desert. But some are actually, like, there's one where islands are really, really close together between Australia and Indonesia, and there's just actually like a really big, deep crevasse so that the animals would never be able to get across that. Okay, so they're separated by some geographic barriers. We're going to see a lot of human impact as we go through this entire section, this environmentalism component to ecology. So just kind of take a look at these sections. And as humans, really, what happens is we move into new areas. Humans, we destroy the complexity of the natural ecosystem. And really the way we do that is by a few ways, okay? So we destroy this natural ecosystem by, we disrupt interactions between species. So we might be moving into an area, so now the coyote is not able to kill the lion or the rabbit because he can't get to the rabbit, okay? Because the rabbits now have an area to hide because they have a fence to hide behind, okay? So we disrupt those. We might remove species. This is especially true in agriculture. When you start growing something in a field, you're only growing one species. So this is especially with agriculture. And we introduce new species. As we move around, we bring species with us. Something like 50% of the insects in America are thought to have come from Europe. Okay, and that changes the ecosystem, and it changes the interactions in the ecosystem. So we'll be talking a lot about the human impact stuff as we go through these chapters.